Awesome. Hello, everybody. How is everyone doing on this beautiful, that's too much. On this beautiful Saturday, I was hoping to make that a little bit lighter, but I think it's just causing a glare. I'm Sherry Shish with Powered by Quilting, and this is month 3 of the Wish Block of the Month, which is this lovely quilt here, or this massive quilt that I'm holding right here. If you're looking for month 1 and 2, you'll need to go to a different video to watch us make the month 1 and 2 blocks. Today, we are making month 3 blocks, which I need to actually move the quilt up a little bit, is this block right here. So month 3 is a little bit easier than month 1 and 2. So if you get done early and you haven't finished your month 1 and 2 blocks, I would highly suggest to use this extra time to go back and finish up those blocks. Because month 3 is essentially a star in a star with one of the flying geese, the darker color, to connect with the other blocks. So what are we doing today, or what fabrics do we have today? We have fabric A, fabric E, fabric F in background. And again, the quilt on the cover of the pattern is in almond. I am using a pure white Island Batik solid for the background of this remake. So in case you didn't want to see it, this is the cover. Now, in the quilt pattern itself, you are going to be looking at page 9 and 10 today. If you're not using these fabrics, make sure you're using the fabric swatch list to make sure that you're using the right thing. Now, this block for month 3, you are going to be making 4 of that same block. Just double checking, I'm not saying anything wrong. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a couple demos on the flying geese that are in this quilt. But essentially, you are making flying geese. That's it. And once we finish the flying geese, we're doing a block assembly using web piecing like we normally do, and I will walk through that as well. But for our first flying geese that we are going to be doing, we are going to be making a small flying geese. So we're going to start from the center of that quilt block and work outwards. So we're going to use one of our fabric F and 2 of our fabric E corner pieces, okay? And what's going to happen is we're going to take the piece and we are going to align it to one of the sides of the rectangle. I like starting with the right hand side. You can start with the left. Either way, it doesn't really matter. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be sewing on that diagonal line. So what you can do if you don't have the clearly perfect angles like I do on my machine, they look like this. Clearly perfect angles. This helps you do your diagonals, your 1/4 inch lines on your machine. I really love them. It helps you not have to draw your lines. But if you don't have that, what you'll do is you're going to take a ruler and a marking pen and draw a diagonal from corner to corner on that background square or the top square. Okay? Like so. And then you're going to sew directly on that line. All right? And before I start, I'm going to turn on the iron because we're going to need that immediately. So you can see I have my line drawn, and I'm going to sew directly on that line. One of the things that I will do, since we're working with smaller pieces, is make sure my stitch length is a little smaller than normal. It's not quite paper piecing stitch length, but short enough that my seams won't pull apart when I work on a piece this small. So once you have this done, one of the first things that you can check to make sure that you are doing this correctly, and you sewed it on the line, is that you can open up this flying geese wing and finger press it. It should cover up everything that you had behind it. So it should still be that same rectangle that you had before. If it isn't, then what you'll want to do is unpick, take out your stitches, and then re-sew it on the line. So there you have it. And then what I'll do is, now that I have that pressed open, I use the finger presser first. before I hit it with an iron, is now I'm going to trim off a 1/4 inch away from the seam, like so. Okay, so that is one corner of my flying geese. Hi, Tessa. Thanks for stopping by and keeping me company. And now we're going to add the other square on the left-hand side. So you're going to line the left-hand square. And again, if you don't have a clearly perfect angles on your machine, we're going to draw a line down the diagonal of this to make our flying geese, which is a triangle, okay? If you have the diagonal the other way, you're going to make a parallelogram. This one makes triangle. So we're going to go ahead and sew that one here. Now, if you're doing this, making the quilt, what I would recommend is do all of this and chain piece it after another. Like, don't do each flying geese by itself. I'm only doing this to kind of show the demo versus having you watch me make all the flying geese for this block. So I'm doing them one at a time. So you fold that open, you see that it covers everything behind it. You can go ahead and trim up this flying geese. And then I'm going to set it with an iron. All right. So, like magic, ta-da! We have our beautiful 4 flying geese that we just finished. It's movie magic. I made them previously. And so we're going to take a center of fabric E. This is the square of fabric E. That's going to be the center of our block. And then our fabric F squares, like so. And we are going to sew this together. Okay, because this is going to be what we're going to say is the center of our star block. And so if you have a grid like we have here, we are going to sew the side columns to the center column. Typically what I like to say is column 1, 2, 3. You're going to sew column 2 to column 1 and column 3 over. But because column 2 is wider, I'm going to sew column 3 over to 2, rotate it, and then do that same thing again. So I'm going to fold this here and do right sides together and sew down. I am not going to cut my thread between these pieces, so they're all going to be kind of touching each other and chained together. So now we have column 3 and column 2 together. And now we're gonna like rotate this again, pretend. And we're gonna sew the other side here. Like so. We're gonna rotate it so it's like this, and we're just now gonna sew all the way down on this side. So now we have our mini block. Ta-da! And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press these open, and then towards the middle on the inside, and then open on the small wings. So essentially we're pressing our seams, so then we can essentially sew the rows together and we'll have the center of this block. This block's really fun because essentially what we're doing is we're making a small one, and then we're making a large one of the same one. Okay. All right, so now we have our block pressed. We're going to fold the rows down together, and your seams should nest because you press them in opposite directions, and you're going to sew the rows together. For a block that's this small, I typically do not pin, but for the larger block, I will most likely pin my seams where they nest together using clover fork pins. And the clover fork pins you pin on either side of the seam. And your block doesn't move. So before we go and press this open, we're going to go ahead and do this on the other side. Now that we have our block here, we're going to go ahead and press our block. And one of the things I do give you the measurement of what this block is supposed to be. I recommend just double checking to make sure that your block ended up this size. Otherwise, as the center of your big block, you might run into some problems. So we have this as our big block, and then I'm going to go ahead and just double check here as the size. It's pretty good. All right, now we're making a flying geese larger that are going to be on the outside of this block, okay? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a background piece, and I'm going to take 2 fabric F pieces and do the same thing as I did with the smaller flying geese. And on the back of these squares, I'm going to draw a diagonal from corner to corner. I'm going to do that here. And we're going to sew down this diagonal once we have it aligned with our piece. Okay, like so. We sew down that line we just drew. I think my pen is running out of ink. So same thing like we did for the smaller one. We're going to open this up. Actually, I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use my fingers. And make sure that we just covered the entire square and we really didn't go too far over, right? Because what you want left is the rectangle. That's the correct size of what you have left once you sew on one of the wings. So trim that away. And we're going to iron. And then we're going to do that for the other side, except I'm going to change pens here. I don't know if this pen's any better, but we'll see. Okay. We draw our line. And then again, we're going to make a triangle, not a parallelogram. So the lines should make this triangle. Okay. And then now we're going to sew down the drawn line. Okay. Make sure that this is covering on both sides before I trim. Now, if you want some bonus half square triangles, because these flying geese are large enough, what I would do is I would go ahead and do a half an inch away from this line. This is like bonus. and I would draw this line. And if you sew down that line, I'll actually show you what this looks like, just in case you wanted to do this and don't like wasting so much fabric. Essentially, these lines are 1/2 inch apart. You can cut them apart now with the 1/2 inch seam allowance on both, right? And you have a sewn half square triangle. If I can open this. Ta-da! And then you can trim it down to whatever size you want. So instead of just throwing away your trimmings, you can make some really kind of neat half square triangles for yourself. All right. So now we have some movie magic that we're doing. Okay? Because I have made some of these flying geese already off stream. And one of them is going to need to be fabric A. Okay? So only one. One. It doesn't matter where you put it, honestly. I think I tell you it's shown on one direction. But what happens in this quilt is in each of the corners, or each of the sides, I guess. Where'd it go? Here it is, somewhere. Here we go. In the center, here we go. Each of the corners, there's one that connects to the corner. And this side connects to the other side. Okay? So really, it doesn't matter which one it is. It's just going to rotate that block when you do the quilt top assembly to have this dark section touching the correct part of the quilt. So very similar to what we just did for sewing the center, we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to take column 3 and sew it to column 2, and then reverse that for the other column. I typically like to sew the smaller width item. If they were all the same, I would just do 2 to 1, 3 to 2. But because the sides are smaller, we're going to do it this way. So we have one side done, and then we're going to go ahead and sew the other side. So these go right sides together, rotate this 180, and sew down this direction. I always have to realign when I bring it back to the machine because it is definitely moves on me when I shift things around. So now we have all of our rows sewn together. We're going to go press them and then sew the rows together to make the block. Make sure you're pressing your seams in alternating directions, either towards the flying geese or towards the corner in the center. Either one, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever you prefer, but I like doing towards the darker fabric. So for the larger star, or the outside star rather, it's towards the flying geese. The other thing I will also mention is you can press your seams open for this entire quilt if you would like, if that's kind of your jam. I personally don't like pressing my seams open, so if you've watched any of my other videos, I talk about how I just kind of deal with any clashing seams that I may have, because honestly, Island Boutique fabric presses really flat, so like even when there's a whole bunch of seams together, it's usually okay. So we're gonna fold over our rows to the middle, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use this fork pin. It looks like this. I don't know if you can see that. And we're gonna go on either side, either side of the seam allowance to pin those together where they nest. Same thing on this side. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around. But what I also know for this block, since it's wide enough, and I'm not going to get into any issues, I'm going to pin the other side too, because they don't overlap enough for me to have a problem. If these are all the same size, you don't want to do this, because then the other seam is literally like right under this one. Right under the edges. So, but this one is perfectly fine to pin both sides. Now with clover fork pins, I do sew over my pins. I know it's a taboo. However, if you don't hit a pin going 100 miles an hour, these fork pins are actually small enough where it'll touch the pin and slide right off of it. So you'll see me speed up and slow down depending on where the pin is in the seam. So you'll see me slow down to go over the pins, speed back up, slow down before I get to the next pin, and then speed back up at the end. Now we're going to do that on the other side. Take the pins out, and now we're going to go press our block. And there you have it. This is month 3. And the last thing you'll want to do is to double check that your block is the correct size, which mine is. Fantastic. You will be making 4 of these blocks for month 3, and then those will get added to the rest of the blocks that you've made for month 1 and 2. And if you finish this block early, you probably didn't finish with month 1 and 2. They were significantly harder. So this is actually kind of an easier month, just so you can catch up on the block of the month. Now, if you are still sewing and want to be sewing live and don't want to miss the next video, make sure to like and subscribe. The next month will be on April 13th, and there is going to be a change in the time. Normally this is 12 p.m. Central. We are going to go live at 1 p.m. Central, so an hour later next month. And then if you are also watching Love Letter Block of the Month, that starts next month as well, but we were going to do Wish first. So it'll be Wish month 4, and then once that's finished, we'll cut stream and restart for Love Letter month 1. See you there. Have a great month. Thanks, Tessa.